Okay, let's jump right into this deep dive. There's a central tension you've brought us today that I think, well, it hits right at the core of how we all define professional readiness.
It really does.
We're taught, maybe not explicitly, but it's in the culture, that success is all about visible progress. It's momentum. It's, expanding influence. If the doors are opening, you must be ready.
And that exact framework creates a really deep, unsettling question for a lot of high-achieving people. The core question we're looking at is this. What if the season that feels like professional regression?
Like you're going backwards.
Exactly. The interruption, the delay, maybe being completely ignored. What if that is the precise moment your calling is being authenticated?
I think for most driven people, whether you're in business, the arts, whatever, that season of silence, that the professional wilderness, you call it, it's automatically seen as a problem to escape.
Or a detour.
It's a detour, an unfortunate pause.
Yeah.
And the impulse is always, always to hustle your way out of it.
And that impulse is the central mistake that the source material we're digging into really wants to reverse. Culturally, we're taught that your purpose is postponed in the wilderness. You wait until it's over to really begin. But the research suggests the opposite. The wilderness isn't where your calling is postponed. It is where it is proven.
And this is where the analysis gets so sharp. Because this whole tension, it really boils down to one fundamental issue that quietly shapes, every major career decision you'll make.
And what's that?
Will your work be powered by dependence or by ambition? And that question, as the literature points out, is answered right there, in those harsh, quiet conditions of the wilderness, in the isolation, the pressure, the unmet expectations.
That's the crucible.
Well, let's start with that cultural clash. Our modern professional world, it doesn't matter what field you're in, it aggressively rewards visibility, speed, immediate output.
Right. We equate growth with expansion, faithfulness with, impressive metrics.
So when we inevitably hit those seasons of, obscurity or limitation, we don't see formation. We see failure. We think, I must be doing something wrong.
And the cost of that misunderstanding is truly significant. When we mistake a structured difficulty for some kind of punishment, we panic.
We do. We rush.
We rush through those formative seasons, we numb ourselves with activity, or we try to bypass them completely with shortcuts.
But the sources seem to suggest that, skipping this necessary testing phase has these huge downstream consequences, especially for leaders.
It does. The result is, well, it's leadership that is undoubtedly gifted. The talent is there, the charisma, the capacity, but it's fundamentally unformed.
So it's productive but fragile.
Productive but fragile. And it proves unsustainable over time. This is precisely the recipe for accelerated burnout, for moral fatigue, because endurance is rare when your internal character is, well, thin.
What's so fascinating here is how the source material reframes this whole idea of scarcity. It suggests the wilderness isn't evidence of failure or, divine displeasure. It's often evidence of intentional formation.
The authors argue that God often leads people into testing not because they're unfit, but because they're being entrusted with a heavier weight, a greater influence, which requires deep structural integrity.
That changes the entire framing of the struggle, doesn't it?
It changes everything. If we accept that premise, then we have to ask the key question. What if this deprivation, this feeling of not having the resources, the recognition, the momentum you expected, what if it isn't meant to break you?
But to expose you.
To expose what truly drives you. Is your engine powered by the need for external success or by an internal submission to the process itself?
That's a brutal question to sit with, especially in a culture that rewards the first one.
It is, but it's essential.
Yeah.
And this brings us to, I think, the definitive yet deeply uncomfortable example that serves as the blueprint for this whole discussion. It's found in Luke chapter 4.
Jesus' experience right before his public ministry.
Exactly.
Okay, let's focus on the sequence here, because the chronology, it seems to matter immensely.
It's everything. So Jesus receives this staggering public affirmation at his baptism. A voice from heaven declares, "You are my beloved Son. With you I am well pleased."
The ultimate identity declaration. The ultimate affirmation of readiness.
You'd think so. But what follows? No immediate ministry launch, no strategic plan. Instead, the text says he is led by the Spirit into the wilderness for 40 days.
That detail, led by the Spirit, that's the critical distinction we need to hammer home here. He wasn't driven there because of failure or exile by accident.
No.
The Spirit actively initiates the wilderness experience. That is intentional preparation.
Absolutely. The theological significance is just crucial here. Identity is declared before the testing begins. The wilderness doesn't create sonship or worth or competence.
It reveals it.
It reveals whether that foundational identity will be trusted when the conditions actively contradict it. When you're hungry, when you're isolated and confronted, will you still believe what was said about you in that moment of affirmation?
That just immediately confronts our modern assumption that affirmation, a big promotion, a successful launch, should lead directly to activation, to
Wow.
acceleration.
Right.
The source material suggests that, no, often, biblically, affirmation actually precedes obscurity.
Precisely. Obscurity is the crucible where character finally catches up to your competence.
And that obscurity in this Luke 4 story is where the vocational testing happens. The sources define the three tests Jesus faced: provision, power, and prestige, not as random moral hurdles, but as fundamental vocational tests.
Yes, and they mirror the core leadership pressures we all see today. They are fundamentally temptations to fulfill your calling through methods that are apart from dependence on the right source.
Okay, let's spend some time with these. The first one, provision.
The test of turning stones into bread. The need is legitimate. He was physically starving. But the temptation weaponizes that legitimate need. It asks, will your mission be sustained by trust in God's timing? Or will you use your own power to secure what you need by any means necessary?
That modern translation is so important. It sounds less like a miracle and more like, well, like high anxiety driving unethical choices, doesn't it?
It's the internal pressure every entrepreneur or nonprofit leader feels. It's the constant worry over legitimate need-making payroll, getting the next client, proving growth. That anxiety can lead to self-sufficiency that's just masking itself as responsibility.
You start cutting corners on quality, stretching the truth in a sales pitch because you feel you have to deliver, and God's timing feels, well, too slow.
And Jesus' response is the model. Man shall not live by bread alone.
Yeah.
He anchors provision not in the material outcome, but in adherence to the right source and the right process.
He's basically saying, I will be obedient even if that means I stay hungry.
That's the internal structure being tested right there.
Okay, next up is the temptation of power. The devil offers Jesus all the kingdoms of the world in an instant, bypassing the cross. This asks if authority will be exercised through obedience and submission to a difficult, patient process.
Or will it be seized through coercion, compromise, or just leveraging worldly systems?
This is the urge to get maximum impact with minimum sacrifice. It's the ultimate shortcut to authority.
It is. Why wait for the hard, costly process of earning trust and formation if you can just make a deal and get the whole kingdom today? This temptation just exposes that desire to rule without submitting to the necessary sacrifice first.
Let's unpack that a little, submitting to the cross first, because that's theological shorthand that needs some context for a broader audience.
Sure. In this context, it means accepting the path of vulnerability, of service, of earned moral authority. The cross is that slow, painful process where your self-interest has to die and genuine, resilient leadership is born.
So the temptation offers the kingdom without the character.
Exactly, and that's what makes that kind of success so brittle. It rests on seizing, not on serving.
Which brings us to the final test, prestige. Throwing oneself off the temple pinnacle to force this angelic rescue and create a spectacle. This is the ultimate test of validation, right?
It is. It asks whether your influence will be received from God on his terms, or if it will be seized through spectacle and compromise purely for external applause.
It's that desire for immediate public visibility that validates your significance.
And it treats obedience not as an end in itself, but as a performance designed for applause. We see this today in the constant pressure for relevance.
The leader who chases vanity metrics.
Yes. Or who sacrifices long-term deep impact for a momentary viral hit. Or who bases their entire sense of worth on their follower count.
It's chasing the audience rather than faithfully doing the work. And the prestige trap is so insidious because it often uses legitimate means. Jesus was tempted with Scripture to justify a shortcut to fame.
And the wilderness strips away the audience. It forces the leader to ask, will I be faithful even if no one is watching, even if my identity isn't validated by public acclaim?
And that test reveals whether your internal drive is rooted in a fear of irrelevance or in a secure conviction.
That's the core of it.
So let's shift the focus now from those external pressures to the internal formation the wilderness is designed to produce. You mentioned accelerated burnout earlier, and the sources really drive home the radical difference between just raw talent and tested dependence.
Absolutely. This is where we have to distinguish between information and formation. Information. It accumulates quickly. You can read every book, you can absorb knowledge, you can treat theology or business strategy like reference material.
It informs your decisions. You can get information in a day.
Exactly. But formation, that's structural. Think of information as the blueprint for a skyscraper. You can have the perfect plans. Formation, though, is the structural steel. It's the deep foundation, the concrete that needs time and friction and stress to cure and harden.
So it's not just knowing the right answer. It's becoming the kind of person who reflexively does the right thing.
That's it. Formation internalizes truth so deeply that it forms reflexes that hold under extreme pressure. When Jesus responded to the tempter, he wasn't checking his notes. His response was instantaneous. That's formation speaking, not just information recall.
And if we look at history, this pattern of strategic, lengthy delay for formation seems to be a prerequisite for major responsibility. I mean, the examples of Moses and Paul, they aren't just incidental, are they?
Not at all. They're intentional blueprints. Take Moses. He was educated in the most powerful system in the world, Egyptian royalty. He thought his calling was accomplished through brute force, his own strength.
Which is why he killed the Egyptian guard.
And God had to dismantle that man. He didn't go from Egyptian prince to the deliverer of Israel overnight. He spent 40 years in Midian, 40 years as a shepherd.
40 years. Not just learning patience, but learning the difference between political power, which he had in Egypt, and earned moral authority, which he gained in total obscurity.
He had to learn restraint, a quality you absolutely need to lead a difficult people for decades. And then you have Paul, the ultimate zealot. After his conversion, he doesn't immediately launch his apostolic platform. He withdraws into Arabia.
And we know almost nothing about that time.
And the absence of detail is almost the point. It was a season of unseen reorientation. It allowed this profound revelation he had to mature into quiet, durable wisdom.
That reframes those hidden years completely. Instead of seeing them as wasted time, you see them as the unseen infrastructure supporting visible obedience. The research even calls God's delay mercy.
It is a mercy. Obscurity protects a calling from premature exposure. It allows your character to mature without the distortions that public applause always brings. We should be grateful for the delay.
Had Moses tried to deliver Israel a year after fleeing Egypt?
He would have led with force and panic. His internal structure was nowhere near ready for the weight of that responsibility.
So what does this all mean for the person listening right now, who maybe feels stuck in that professional dry spell?
It means the wilderness is intentional, and it is productive. It clarifies your motives. It builds resilience without the crutch of external validation. And most importantly, it anchors your identity beyond your outcomes.
Leaders who emerge from that formed, not hurried.
They carry an authority that doesn't need constant affirmation. They lead from a deep, settled conviction, not from anxious reaction.
So instead of asking, which is the natural thing to ask, how do I escape this wilderness? The practical wisdom here is to start asking, what is this season forming in me that success or speed could never have achieved?
That shift in perspective is everything. The wilderness is temporary, but the formation it produces outlasts momentum, it outlasts fame, and it ensures that when that massive responsibility finally arrives, the structure doesn't collapse under the weight.
And here's the final provocative thought for you to carry with you this week. What if the limitations you are currently resisting, that delay you are attempting to outrun, or the recognition you feel you deserve, is in fact shielding you from responsibilities you are not yet formed to carry?